Hello, Neuromatch. My name is Edward Kim, and I'm excited to present our work, The Selectivity and Competition of the Mind's Eye in Visual Perception. This work was done with Miriam Daniali, Jocelyn Rigo, and Garrett Kenyon. And so I think we're all familiar with the recent successes in AI. They're being used now in autonomous vehicles, voice assistants, medical imaging. But I'm not sure if many of us have heard of some of the sort of spectacular failures that we're seeing in machine learning. So for example, Amazon Recognition here had up to 30% failures in recognizing faces of darker females. Now, in human perception, we almost have the opposite effect, right? We actually see faces everywhere, even where there aren't faces. And so the basic idea of our work was, can we take some ideas, some overarching themes from neuroscience and apply them to machine learning models to better increase their performance and robustness? So the first theme that we looked at, and this is sort of the main theme, was that faces and actually different types of input stimuli are processed in unique pathways. We know the dorsal and the ventral pathway exist for these major what and where pathways, but there are also areas. So for example, the fusiform face area, the FFA, it's known to selectively activate when people see faces, specifically upright faces, when compared to activations of non-objects. And it's not just faces. Faces have their their selective areas, but there's also the PPA, the parahippocampal place area, that activates with places, EBA for bodies, parts, visual word form area, etc. Okay, so that's one theme, that there are separate areas, separate pathways for different stimuli. The second one is that selectivity in the visual cortex can be achieved through competition, whether it's a lateral competition or predictive coding type competition. We know that neurons are selective and they inhibit each other in the presence of their preferred stimulus. We actually know that high-level areas such as words and faces compete for cortical territory. So this idea of competition also exists. And so the underlying algorithm that we're going to use in our model is sparse coding. Sparse coding can be thought of as an unsupervised or self-supervised learning algorithm where all we're trying to do is reconstruct an input X, input stimulus, using phi and A. So phi is going to be our dictionary. A is going to be the activity of the dictionary. And so if we have perfect reconstruction, the error between X and phi A will be 0. But we can't just look at reconstruction. We're also trying to be sparse, meaning we want to make sure the activities, the coefficients of the dictionary is mostly 0. So for example, if you look at this image patch, and we're trying to reconstruct it, we're going to do a linear combination of our dictionary elements and our activity, where most of these activities are going to be 0. And in the sparse coding problem, not only are we learning the activity, the inference, but we're also learning the dictionary or the generators of the data. And so we propose a multi-path deconvolutional competitive algorithm where you're going to have multiple pathways here in its architecture. So there's a face pathway that's only seen faces, and an object pathway that's seen general objects from ImageNet. And the details of the algorithms can be found in our paper, but the general idea is that an image, when input stimulus comes in, it's sent to both of the pathways, and all of the neurons at all of the different scales are going to be competing actively to represent the input stimulus. And so, for example, if a neuron in the face pathway explains sort of the general outline of the face, it becomes activated, and then no other neuron from no other pathway or layer can then explain those set of pixels. And so what we're finding is that the activity of these multipath networks, sparse coding networks, mirror what we're seeing in the brain. So the response of the preferred category, so face or object, is about twice that for the non-preferred category, consistently observed in most normal individuals. What we're also finding is that if we pass like an inverted face to the pathway, the activity of the face pathway, upright face pathway, actually goes down, but not as much to the activity of the general objects. And so we can see here with an inverted face, so there was a slightly but significant decrease in the response of face selective regions using fMRI or scalp or P, and we're seeing that similar effect in our FFA model. And so finally, we wanted to explore this idea of bias. So we've seen 35% failures in these deep learning models. And so what we did was we trained the R model. We've just shown it 800 examples of white males and 10,000 general objects from ImageNet. And we've done the same training set for fine-tuning VGG16 and ResNet, as well as custom CNN, 3-layer CNN model. And as we would expect if the testing data was the same distribution as a train, everyone does very well. But if we then test on out of distribution ethnicities and genders that the training set does not have, we're seeing these same like 30% failures in a custom CNN, and in the fine-tuned ResNet 50 and VGG16, we're still seeing failures up to 5-6%. Whereas in our multipath deconvolutional competitive algorithm, we're seeing nearly perfect accuracy on all ethnicities and all genders. And here we're just showing a histogram of the activity ratios of the FFA to IT on all of the different out of distribution data examples. And so our architecture provides some robustness and structure to out of distribution and bias, and we can overcome face detection bias problem with this model. All right, so thank you for your time, and looking forward to meeting you all at Neuromatch.